Good evening. I'm an urban designer. I think a lot about the city. I spend a lot of time walking around the city, and cities are generally made by architects. There are a lot of architects here tonight, but tonight I'm not going to talk about the work of an architect, but the work of a poet, Charles Baudelaire. Now, what can a decadent, absinthe-addled symbolist poet tell us about contemporary urban design? This sentence comes from one of his essays about the flaneur, and I'm going to take a look at it word by word, sometimes going off on tangents, to see what the concept can tell us about cities, how we make them, and what we make of them. Let's start with the word perfect. Baudelaire's flaneur is an abstraction and shouldn't be taken too literally. Nothing is ever perfect, least of all the city. Art gets dented and tagged, people don't always act decently, buildings decay and get hacked around. We can strive for brilliance, but we should expect and even encourage imperfection. Now, flaneur literally means stroller or saunterer, but Baudelaire used it to mean a person who walks the city in order to experience it. Usually thought of as an aristocratic male, a flaneur could also be anyone who pays enough attention to observe the city and its people, a child, a skateboarder, a tourist, a homeless person. Cities matter, people matter. We should each be proud of our city, not out of parochialism, but out of engagement and belonging. We should get angry when our city is threatened, delight in its celebrations, and embrace the jagged emotional peaks of the skyline, rather than the safe, sedated flatline of the suburbs. Baudelaire's flaneur is in one sense a spectator, a disengaged and cynical observer, among the crowd, yet not part of it. But you needn't be detached to enjoy what Jane Jacobs called the sidewalk ballet, the street as catwalk, reading the script of the city while simultaneously taking a part on its stage. Urban designers often strive for human scale, creating a sense of comforting familiarity. But humans often seek out spaces that dwarf our own scale. We visit mountains and oceans for their very vastness. A metropolis needs both comfort and a sense of immensity, of being a part of something much bigger than any single one of us. We can argue against sprawl on environmental grounds, but we shouldn't just advocate density the way that nutritionists tell us to eat our greens. We need to emphasize the joys that urban life can bring, the joy of human encounter, of serendipity, of messy vitality, all the things that suburbs are designed to eliminate. A city that you take no part in making would also be a joyless place for most. The ability to customize your own environment, express your creativity or allegiances, can help turn the densest, greyest streets into something that feels like home. Even nomads sometimes feel the need to set up a nest. The noun house usually connotes a standalone family dwelling, but the verb to house and the word household can apply to any place to live, including apartments. Of course, living in this sort of house requires rather different expectations of space and privacy, and may not be our castle. Our home extends beyond our walls into the city itself. I chose this location because it's approximately the weighted centroid of the CBD, the middle of things. Cities need recognizable middles, since without peaks of density and activity, the metropolis becomes monotonous and directionless. A gradient of density allows a variety of experiences and gives a sense of purpose to our movements. What distinguishes a city from a mere town? The constant presence of strangers. Even in Wellington, where you can't walk to the shops without bumping into a colleague, a former flatmate, two ex-lovers, and maybe your next one, there are still 1,000 times as many people as you'll ever call a friend. The crowd, the anonymous multitude, is the flaneur's natural element. To truly know the city, you have to be surrounded by it, immersed in it, not just dabbling your toes in its shallows. Everything in the city is amid everything else, surrounded by contrasts and contradictions, given meaning by difference and context. Nothing stands in splendid isolation. Everything is in conversation. Cities aren't always booming and vibrant. Pockets of decay, moments of stillness, the ebb tide of capital and migration all leave opportunities for reflection and fruitful melancholy. The structures of buildings and society stand exposed, and even the most gregarious urbanite needs moments of calm among the fallow parts of the city. It may seem a trivial word to emphasize, but "and" is actually one of the most important. Cities thrive under diversity and contradiction. They are global and local, traditional and modern, homely and overwhelming, beautiful and ugly. They need order and incident, solid and void, legibility and surprise, planning and emergence. Cities are always in flux. Even those such as Venice that have become museums of themselves are constantly changing because a city is made of people, and the people are always changing, moving, interacting, and animating the streets. The flow of people, commerce, culture, and ideas is what brings a city to life. We mustn't let streets become simply corridors for movement. There must be places to be, not just pass through. Yet movement is inherent in the nature of a metropolis. A city is more than an agglomeration of self-contained villages. It is a place through which people flow, its neighborhoods woven together into a greater whole. The middle, amid, the midst. Baudelaire really hammered home the importance of a flaneur being among things. It could become overwhelming, but it is the very anonymity of a large city that allows one to find quiet times alone in the middle of the masses, a meal for one on a rainy night. The flaneur is always attuned to the ephemeral, a graffito, a face in the crowd, a pop-up shop, and what it tells us about the lives around us. It's what Baudelaire called the botany of the pavement. It's the archaeology of the present, finding joy and insight in the most trivial details of urban life. And yet cities also need room for solemnity, connections to vanished lives, the opportunities to think beyond our current time and space. To the extent that there is anything timeless and unchanging about human nature, it is revealed in the cities that we shape and that shape us. So, this is what Baudelaire said. For the perfect flaneur, for the passionate spectator, it is an immense joy to set up house in the middle of the multitude, amid the ebb and flow of movement, in the midst of the fugitive and the infinite. These words can give us inspiration to make the city better or simply to make it our own.